All right, Steve with Coin Stuff I Like, bringing you part two in the Peace Dollar series, covering Peace Dollar issues from U.S. Mint and Moonlight Mint. And this time we will be covering the dates 1917 through 1921. And this covers both Moonlight Mint uh, prior to 1921, and then both U.S. Mint and Moonlight Mint with 1921 dates. So we'll be covering that, and we'll go back to part one. And if you haven't watched part one, please do. Um, but we'll just cover these couple of different things about the obverse and reverse designs. The prior to approval, the design submitted by Anthony D. Franceschi uh, had a Roman numeral, but the obverse looked very similar to this. The said lose the Roman numerals, we'll put Arabic numerals in, otherwise the design stayed essentially the same when it was finally approved in late 1921. The reverse, and I left out a couple of elements in that part one. One of the design features for the high relief and low relief, for that matter, is the use of the V instead of a U in trust, using that as a symbol for victory in World War One. The other design element that I left out in part one, was that the little dots are a little more angulated and they're larger in the high relief, which also was included here, adopted by the modern peace dollars, but they're smaller and more dot-like in the low relief issues from the U.S. Mint from 1922 to 1935. As far as the reverse goes, Di Franceschi submitted two reverse designs prior in the competition, one with a broken sword in the beak, and another with the eagle standing on a rock with olive branches. And they said, okay, well, we'll just adopt the second design, standing on olive branches, but we'll move the broken sword down to the rock instead of in the beak. So this was what was approved. This design, the broken sword design, high relief, this was what was approved, but then there was the uproar when they released the description to the press and to the public, and ultimately they had to do a little emergency surgery on the reverse. And Charles Morgan, on December 23rd, 1921, removed the broken sword and created the high relief reverse by doctoring up some of the elements down here. So that's the high relief, and that's what we'll be covering in today's video. Starting with the 1917 issue, or dated peace dollar from the Moonlight Mint. Now, 1917, the significance, again, if you watched part one, I gave some dates at the beginning of that video. 1917 was when the U.S. entered World War One. So that's when Dan Carr and Moonlight Mint issued their first peace dollar, fantasy dollar, and it has essentially the Arabic numerals, and otherwise the design elements are very similar on the obverse. This is high relief. It's 31 thousandths of an inch relief, and then for the reverse, he used a broken sword design, which was approved and was the reverse that was going to go into production until the public uproar, and they had to remove it on December 23rd, 1921. This is also high relief in the Dan Carr issues with a 31 thousandth inch relief. This is die pair 1 from the Moonlight Mint, is overstruck on a peace dollar, I probably from 1922 to 1935 peace dollar. And the mintage for this was 663. So pretty low mintage. This was produced in 2017, so it was the 100th anniversary of U.S. entering World War One, and this is the one in my collection, which is an MS-69. 2018, Dan Carr followed this pattern with die pair 2, same obverse and reverse other than the date change. Also overstruck on a peace dollar. The mintage was lower, only 421 were minted. As far as dates go, remember that 1918 was first was the Pittman Act earlier in the year, which ultimately was connected to the production of peace dollars later on. But this Pittman Act initially called for melting U.S. silver and a loss of about 40% of the originally minted Morgan silver dollars. Later in 1918, November of 1918, that's when the armistice was signed and agreed to, which put a halt to the war while they worked on the peace treaties and so forth. So 1918 has that connection. These are produced in 2018, so there's that 100-year connection to that 1918 date that appears on the coin. This my example is an MS-70 example of the 1918. I'm sorry, this is the wrong image, but it is a MS-70. I apologize for that. 1919, again, same obverse and reverse, same high relief used by the Moonlight Mint, Dan Carr. Die pair 3, a mintage of 411. Again, overstruck on a peace dollar. Now, 1919, date-wise, the connection is that this was when the Treaty of Versailles was signed. All right, so the peace treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919. There's a connection there. Then the 1920 Moonlight Mint offering, this is a MS-70, same obverse, reverse dies other than the date, overstruck on a peace dollar. Mintage is only 296 of these. So these will be hard to come by. The date connection, 1920, that's when in January of 1920, the Treaty of Versailles took effect, and that was peace for the majority of the world, except that the U.S. Congress did not ratify the Treaty of Versailles. So that required until 1921 before the Treaty of Berlin was signed with Germany, which created the peace agreement between U.S. and Germany. So 1920 is connected to the when the Treaty of Versailles went into effect earlier in that year. And then later in that year, that's Farron Zerbe's address to the ANA that essentially really got the ball rolling for a dollar for coinage commemorating the peace. So, keeping with the Moonlight Mint, in 2021, the 100th anniversary of the first minting of peace dollars in 1921, Dan Carr produced this peace dollar. Now, he used the Roman numerals, which was in the original designs submitted in the competition by Anthony DeFranceschi, which was later changed to Arabic numerals prior to final approval in December of 1921. So he modified this and went with the original design and kept the broken sword reverse. Again, still high relief, 31 thousandths of an inch. This particular issue from the Moonlight Mint, there's only 100 minted, and they're all minted on 1921 peace dollars. They're overstruck on 1921 peace dollars. So this once was a 1921 peace dollar, U.S. mint, and there's only 100 of these. So these are a bit of a prize to have, and mine is a MS-70, so I'm really happy to have that. Now we'll get on to the U.S. Mint. U.S. Mint started production in 1921, December 28th. 1921 is when the first peace dollars were struck. And these have a little bit different relief. These are called high relief, but the when Morgan did the doctoring of the reverse to remove the broken sword, the relief was also reduced from the likely original 30th 1,000ths of an inch. The obverse retains that relief, but the reverse was half of that, 15th 1,000th of an inch. So this is sort of a modified high relief. It has the Arabic numbers as is called for. So this was the original high relief U.S. Mint peace dollar. They minted just over 1 million of these in a very short order on the end of 1921. The estimated survival, on the other hand, is only 100,000. So this is one of the key dates, or some people might say it's a semi-key date, but I'll call it a key date. It's certainly going to cost you like a key date, particularly in mint state. So you can see that I have an MS-61. My decision in collecting the peace dollar series was I didn't want to go hog wild and go for top pops and go for registry set type things. I wanted to get them less expensive, so the Annex label, MS-61. I wanted to try to keep mostly in lower MS grades, and for the really hard key dates, I would accept a AU grade. So I just wanted to get something that was, they're fairly decent looking coins. They're more affordable. Now remember, in part one, I told you that I have not looked at any of my peace dollar collection for VAMs. I'm more into the Morgan VAMs and looking for Morgan VAMs, but I've never looked at the VAMs for the peace dollars. And I showed you one, the 1935 S fourth ray. I have a VAM 3B. I discovered that in the production of that part one. So I had a look at this one, this 1921, and I said, okay, let's just see what I have here. So I looked at it, and it's a VAM 3. VAM 3 is a top 50 VAM. So, like the 1935S, which I'll probably send back to Annex for attribution and reholdering, I'll probably do the same with this one. A VAM 3, if you look at the PCGS price guide, which you got to take with a grain of salt, because they're high retail. The VAM 3 bumps your value by about 46%. So, I got this, and it automatically have a 40%, 46% premium, or at least, something that's substantial. Maybe not 46%, but something substantial. Just by identifying this VAM, which is a long way of saying check your coins, particularly for die varieties and some of the top 50 VAMs. Now, I could send this one into PCGS because they do accept top 50s. I'm going to keep my collection as all Annex. And one of the other reasons, besides cost and affordability in my choice for my piece dollar collection, is the knowledge that Annex will grade and hold all of Dan Carr's pieces. So I'll just keep the Moonlight Mint and US Mint theme together, all in Annex holders. So the VAM 3 is the ray is supposed to go underneath the L, like you see here, underneath the O or the D, all the other letters. But this was someone was re-engraving these to bolden them up, and got a little bit aggressive, and the ray ended up going over the top, at least going through the lower part of the L. This is a nice one to find after not looking, and find a top 50 right off the bat. There are other markers, like on the obverse. They did some bolding here of the B. There's some light doubling towards the rim and Liberty, and then there's these die scratches. There's also these die scratches here at the bottom of the tail feather near the rock. And here's another closer view of that bar. It has all the markers. It is a VAM 3, and man, I'm glad I'm looking at my piece dollars, my US Mint piece dollars in this video series. Maybe I'll find some more interesting VAMs. So there you have it. But before I go, I want to talk about some piece dollars from the early years that I will never have, because they're very, very rare. So there are some high relief proofs that were made in 1921, early 1922, different finishes with very low mintages, and the survival rates are very low, as you see here. There's also these sandblast. This is the 1922 matte finish proof. This is a PCGS image. And this is the 1921 sandblasted and antiqued, which they did. They minted 8 each of 21 and 22, these special finish. And there may be only one of these of each left surviving. So you'll never see me own these. And then the same thing, they also did low relief proofs in 1922. They did a matte finish. There's 10 minted, maybe 4 to 6 remain. There's a satin finish, 10 minted, maybe only 1 remains, very low. And they did one with a satin finish, but happened to use the reverse of 21. So a low relief obverse, high relief reverse, and the, again, minted 10, maybe only 1 survives. So you'll not see me own these, but I wanted to include them in for completeness in this first video, our second video, part two, which covers 1917 through 1921, and I'll just throw these in as well. So I also, before I go, I want to mention that they started with the high relief dies in 1922, just like this proof that you see here. They started with high relief dies, and they minted about 32,400 peace dollars intended for circulation using high relief dies, just like they did in the end of 1921, in the beginning of 1922. They minted a bunch of these. They started a bunch of these intended for circulation, but they were having problems with striking them up and so forth, and they abandoned it and said, okay, we got to melt these high relief 1922 circulating coins, and that's what they supposedly did. But evidently there's been at least one circulated high relief 1922 peace dollar that has been reported. And this is not unlike what happened at the end of the St. Gaudens Double Eagle run, and also what happened in 1964 in Denver with the peace dollar. There's been no reported 1964 D peace dollars, but we do know in 1965 they minted a bunch of them. They're supposedly all melted. So I'll mention that here. You probably will never find a 1922 high relief circulated peace dollar, but I wanted to mention it. They're supposedly all melted. So thank you for watching this part two. If you haven't watched part one, go back and watch that as well. I'll be bringing you part three, which is then we get into the U.S. Mint low relief peace dollars, at least through we'll say 1926. So thank you for watching, and remember, buy stuff you like, but be smart about what you buy. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.